I am someone who only really came into watch collecting as a hobby in my 30s. Before that, I always wore a watch, but I wouldn't have been able to tell you anything about it. Now, as I start to approach my 40s, I wanted to try to find a way and give back some of the joy that the hobby has brought to me. One idea that came to mind was trying to make the hobby more accessible for others. I thought about what the barriers were that I had to initially overcome, and I think the most logical starting point for a series like this is the terminology involved. There are so many terms in watchmaking that make perfect sense once you know them, but from the outside looking in can be quite confusing. Now that as a concept for a video might not seem that enticing for long-term hobbyists, but I wouldn't consider myself to be an expert, so I would love it if you could watch along and anything important you think that I miss out on, add into the comments to make this video as useful as possible to newcomers. I will add there that I've tried to be as concise and direct as possible, so more detail could be provided in most cases. We're going for general understanding here. With that said, let's get into the video. A quite organisational aside just before we start, I thought carefully about how to structure this video. I initially thought alphabetical order would work just fine, but then connected terms were at different points in the video, so I put everything into some categories, those being movement related terms, complication related terms, dial related terms, dimension related terms, and miscellaneous. The movement of a watch refers to the device inside it that handles tracking the time. In a lot of cases in watches, this is something that you'll never actually see. You might assume that accuracy is the most desirable factor in a movement, but often fans of horology value craftsmanship above all else. If a movement is described as mechanical, that means it's powered by a spring. This slowly releases its stored energy through gears and a device called an escapement. The energy is released in a controlled way, which is transferred into the movement of the hands to tell the time. If a watch is just described as having a mechanical movement, that often means it will be hand wound. This means that you need to turn the crown to transfer energy into the spring to power the watch. Everything I just said about mechanical, except the movement has a weighted rotor that spins while you wear it, and that rotation is used to tighten the spring. Both mechanical and automatic movements have second hands that sweep around the dial. This is something people in horology get really excited about. The smoother the sweep, the more desirable the movement. A quartz movement uses a battery to charge a quartz crystal. This causes it to vibrate at a predictable rate, and that is converted into electrical pulses which drive a motor, moving the hands around the dial at precise intervals. Because of this, they have a distinct ticking motion. Even extremely cheap quartz movements are likely to be considerably more accurate than almost any mechanical movement. Generally, quartz watches are cheaper because the movements are less complicated and cheaper to produce despite being more accurate. Not all fans of horology are interested in quartz pieces because they're often seen as white goods, akin to a dishwasher, functional but lacking that all-important craftsmanship. My personal advice is don't listen to that. There are some great quartz watches out there. An analog watch refers to one that tells the time with hands, and a digital piece tells the time with digits. Most digital watches are powered by quartz movements, but there are some more unique pieces that tell the time through digits and have mechanical or automatic movements. I can't think of a better way of describing this other than saying, essentially, it's a computer strapped to your arm. A lot of fans of horology would look at this with some level of disdain because they're so multifunctional that the watch element can often be an afterthought. For me personally, I understand the benefits for health tracking, but I'm not a fan of devices that ping me with notifications if I can avoid them. This is a quartz movement with a mechanical chronograph module attached to it. You get the accuracy and reliability of the quartz with the smooth sweep of a mechanical chronograph hand. It's more complicated than I'm about to make it sound. But if you imagine an automatic watch powered by your movement through a rotor with the accuracy of a quartz and an even smoother sweep than a mechanical watch, that's a spring drive. This is a blanket term that refers to anything a watch can do that goes beyond telling the time, and sometimes it's just about the way that it tells the time. Think of this as brands making their watches more expensive as selling points, more useful to you, the customer, and often as ways to show off their manufacturing prowess. The acronym GMT doesn't mean anything different in horology. It still stands for Greenwich Mean Time and refers to watches that have an extra hand, often a stylized arrow, and a 24-hour fixed bezel, which in combination can be used to track a second time zone. A chronograph watch will have extra pushers either side of the crown, which start, stop, and often reset a stopwatch. Often this is supported by extra subdials to allow for the tracking of longer time frames. A Moonphase complication does exactly what it says on the tin. It follows the moon cycle, showing you its current phase on the dial. Tourbillons were created initially to counteract the effects of gravity on pocket watches as they often sat upright. They don't really serve much practical purpose in a wristwatch, but they do look beautiful and are seen as a prestige complication for their complexity. A sandwich dial is so named because it has multiple layers stacked on top of each other. This aids in creating a real sense of depth. Sunburst dials are designed to catch light in a dynamic way. As a result, they can look dramatically different under different lighting conditions. Guilloché is a decorative pattern engraved into a watch and involving intricate line work, often on the dial but sometimes also on the movement. This is often achieved through the use of specialist machinery, but at the highest end can also be done by hand. Enamel dials are made from firing powdered glass onto a metal dial base in layers. It is a difficult, time-consuming and volatile process that can often lead to imperfections. Traditionally, enamel dials were often crafted by a small number of artisans, with all of this culminating in a very high asking price for a perfect dial. This is a measurement across the watch from case edge to case edge, usually measured without the crown. The bigger the diameter, the bigger the watch of course, but it's worth bearing in mind that square and tonneau-shaped watches will wear larger than their diameter would indicate. Thinner watches are seen as more refined, and there is some truth in that owing to the miniaturization required of the components making up the piece and the movement. Thicker watches may be more robust, but it's worth bearing in mind that if you go too thick, the watch won't fit under a cuff, and the thicker a watch is, the heavier it's likely to be, making the wearing experience less comfortable. The lugs on a watch are the prongs that stick out from the case to attach the strap or bracelet to. This is how far apart one lug is from another on the same side of the watch, top or bottom. The measurement between the lugs can be important if you're looking to change the strap or bracelet with a replacement. The lug-to-lug measurement is between one set of lugs at the top and the other at the bottom of the case. Even if you have a small case diameter, a long lug-to-lug measurement can make the watch wear larger and on smaller wrists cause overspill with the angle of the strap. If a watch is described as in-house, that means that the movement used is also made by the same brand. A lot of smaller brands will be advertised with movements which they have bought in from external companies. In-house is seen as desirable because it means the watch has been designed with more creative agency and the brand itself has access to more resources. Seiko is probably the best example of an in-house brand, as they do literally everything themselves, even down to growing their own quartz crystals for use in their watches. If you get into the hobby, you'll probably hear the term Seiko fanboy thrown around. This is one of the many reasons that the brand is popular. Swiss Made is a label printed on the dial, normally at 6 o'clock. It's designed to act as a sign of quality, and watches must meet a strict set of requirements involving their manufacture, casing and quality control in order to be able to use it on a watch. The acronym JDM refers to watches designed for the Japanese domestic market. These are watches only sold to customers in Japan. This isn't different to its standard meaning really. Patina refers to the natural aging process of a watch. This can often be a selling point of a model with a bronze case or when shopping for vintage pieces, though you might see it discussed as a tropical dial. So there we have it. I genuinely hope this guide will help at least one person get into the hobby, but as I said at the start, I'm no expert, and I want this to be as useful a resource as possible. Ultimately, I had to draw a line somewhere with what I chose to include, as otherwise the video would end up being unwieldy in length. It would mean the world to me if you could help me expand this through the comments section, adding more detail, corrections if necessary, and other terms you think people might find useful no matter how obscure. I open the floor to you and thank you for any contributions in advance. As ever, thank you for your time. If you've enjoyed what you've seen or found it informative, consider dropping the video a like and subscribing for more content like this in future.